Good afternoon and welcome to this latest ANME webinar. And we are very happy to be joining you today alongside James Massey from the Copyright Licensing Agency. And James is going to be talking to us about understanding copyright. So without further ado, I'd just like to say hello and thank you for joining us, James. How are you today?
Thanks, Dave. I'm well. Hope everyone else is as well. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see that there.
Yep, that's all coming through fine. I think just whilst you're getting ready to start, I'll mention a couple of housekeeping things for the audience. You may notice already, those of you who like to press buttons, that the chat function isn't available for this session. So what we do have, though, is the Q&A function. So we would encourage you to ask questions throughout James's presentation. And at the end, we've got some time dedicated to come back and answer those questions. So the more creative, the better. And I'm sure James is going to be very capable of asking those. There'll be an element of interaction, so keep an eye on the Q&A because you'll be able to respond to some questions within there. And other than that, I think that was everything that I needed to cover. Q&A, yeah, I think it's over to you, James, and I will get my ugly mug off screen and leave everybody in your very capable hands.
Thanks, Dave. Replace it with my ugly mug. There should be a trigger warning, I'm afraid. I should have said that before my big picture came up. But great to speak to everyone directly. Really appreciate you giving up the time. I spoke to Rick Cowell a little while ago, about sort of 6-7 months ago, when I started in the role as development manager for schools. And I've been very keen on looking at the right audience for copyright and helping support in schools, you know, what's happening, the problems that are being encountered, and trying to help find solutions, and also signpost and make sure that you know, people have a go-to for any questions or queries they've got. So like I said, my role, I started about 6 months ago, very much engaging with schools around all those different elements to make sure people feel that there is a point of contact, that sometimes smiley face. I do smile a lot, but that smiley face that you can just come to and ask questions. And if I don't have the answer specifically, I've got a great team behind me as well that can help and support also. So, like I say, I'm not the all-knowing, I'm afraid, but I can sort of field a lot of the things that school related, and if there is anything that's out of my wheelhouse, then I can certainly point you in the right direction. So I suppose in a very long-winded way, I'm telling you that I'm here to help, and you know, I think you guys do a great job, and you very much you know, got your finger on the pulse around what's happening with technology and copyright in schools. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm a good point of contact. As far as me myself's concerned, I've been 20 plus years in education. I put a plus there because it can get a bit depressing. Very much in different roles. I started as a primary teacher, and then I moved on to working in education technology with a number of different companies, Discovery Education, Espresso, curriculum companies, etc. So a bit of a broad church of experience. Essentially, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I've just put a title on this webinar because it just reminds me of back in the day when I used to teach in London. I was starting out as a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed NQT, a newly qualified target, as they used to call them, and I was also the computing coordinator. And someone came to me, and when I was querying about some imagery that they'd found, you know, what rights do we have to use this? They told me, don't worry, I found it online. So I just thought that was a nice little tagline to consider when we're thinking about what's going on within schools. And I don't think any of us are under any illusion that it can be a bit like the Wild West, copyright and how things are used within schools, and everyone's trying to do a good job and just trying to improve learning outcomes. And you know, things within that never-ending to-do list can take different priorities on that list, and you know, no one's under any illusion of that at all. But you can just see me there, just in the middle. That was back in the day, and I was, like I said, as an IT coordinator, I was dealing with images just taken from websites, shared willy-nilly across the school. There was photocopying of entire books going on. Plus, I'm sure a lot of stuff that I was glad that I didn't know about. But like I said, I've been on both sides, and I'm really enjoying my time with the Copyright Licensing Agency, because it gives me that great contact and conduit with schools, which I certainly hold so dear. So, just a bit of an idea of an agenda. Like Dave was saying, I've put a bit of interactivity into the session. I'm sure my wife will agree with me that no one wants to hear my voice for nearly an hour. So I was hoping to get a few of your opinions on some parts that I'll be showing. Particularly, there was a really helpful survey that was done through Rick. You may or may not have been a part of that. And you were asking some really pertinent questions, and you had some queries and concerns around copyright. It might have been real life situations that were happening, and you wanted to just pose those and ask, well, what's the right thing to do, which is exactly the right course of action. So I want to explore some of those. I've put them into a bit of a kind of a statement by statement, and we can just have a look at what the best course of action would be. Also, if there is things that we don't deal with at the CLA, I will be brutally honest, as I quite rightly should be. I'm not here to lead people up the garden path and say, I think this is what you should do, or otherwise. We have a very specific remit, and I'll explain that to you, but I will be able to signpost and help you find the right information as well. So there's no question unanswered, but we might not be the panacea of that particular knowledge bank. As far as agenda is concerned, just want to explore, why we exist as an agency and what we do. A little bit about what's covered by the license, because I think this can cause some confusion. Also, opposed to that, what's not covered by the license is equally important. We'll look at some of the common misconceptions that come up quite regularly, particularly things that I see time and time again, even in the sort of 6 months or so that I've been with the agency so far. Where's the help and support? So, like I said, you've got me, but there's also other areas that you can find help and support from. So I want to signpost those to you, and then we can have a little Q&A at the end. Excuse me. So any questions or queries you've got, but please do remember, like I said, this is just treat this as a bit of an intro as well, and it is recorded. So if you don't get your questions answered here, then we can always come back to them and make sure they're answered another time. That's not a problem. We want everyone to have a forum. So just to start, I'm curious as to people's opinions as to why the CLA actually exists. So I've asked Ben very kindly to just put that into the Q&A area, that question. I'm just wondering what people's thoughts and feelings are, and there is no wrong answer here. Well, there is a wrong answer. I'll be honest about that. But I'm not going to look at people and frown at them or anything like that. I'm just curious to understand what people's understanding of our role is with schools specifically. But if you have a look in the Q&A there, Ben's put, why does the CLA exist? If you could just use the little comment tool there, and I can see people are racing in there to hopefully add some elements. Why do we exist? What do we offer at the Copyright Licensing Agency? It might be that you don't know, and in which case, please do put that, because as part of my engagement role for schools, I'd very much like to know if there is a blanket uncertainty as to what we do. But like I said, just any thoughts and feelings. Let's give it another sort of 10 seconds or so if anyone would be brave enough to pop anything in. If not, I shall lay it all out on the line and explain what I think is a clear remit for what we do. But Dave's jumped in there offering advice when schools have questions around copyright. I'm going to answer that first of all, because that's a really key question. Actually, there's some nuances there, and actually I think we'll go in there because I think people have had a long day. So they're probably just kind of warming their typing fingers up. But Dave, that is really key about asking questions around copyright. To be clear, we provide a service. We provide a blanket license. So for that reason, we are not an advisory bureau for copyright generally, but what we can do is give help and support and to find where you might find those answers. So we can give advice around the service we provide, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail shortly. But yeah, we don't just provide kind of legal advice or copyright advice generally, but we can certainly help if there is things that you need to ask. And certainly, Mr. T. English, to help with compliance to copyright law. Yeah, like I said, we want to make sure that you're doing the right thing and you're not infringing copyright. The way to do that is through the actual license that's provided. So I think let's look at that together. Let's explore it in a bit more detail, because to me, it's very much about rebalancing the system. Why do we exist? So, like I said, we provide a service. The Copyright Licensing Agency, and I want to make it clear, it says agency at the end, not authority. We're very much carrot, not stick. We provide blanket licenses that are given to schools so they can copyright, they can copy published content, whether it be journals, books, digital content, websites, and they can use it for the purposes of teaching and learning. So what happens is we have a mandate from publishers. We then provide those blanket licenses to authorities like the Department for Education in the instance of English state schools, and then we take the remunerations from that and we redistribute it to the publishers and the creators of that content and that work, so they can continue to create content. So very much rebalancing the system and making sure authors get fair payment for the work they create. Not everyone is J.K. Rowling. It's not the case that everyone's got money pouring in left, right, and centre from all these different IPs. There is a lot of creators that are trying to put food on the table, and quite rightly, like any property, they should be remunerated for what they create, so they can then continue to create the next great stuff for the classroom. And on top of that, with my teacher hat on, I also feel very strongly that we want to protect our next generation of content creators by making sure that their voice and their ideas, they matter and they have value. Because if we don't protect what the next generation, what the current generation are doing, then what message are we giving? And I don't think there's been a time where there's been so many opportunities, so many mediums to create content. It's very exciting in that respect, but it's got to have value. Someone's put effort and work into that, whether it's a picture or whether it's a piece of writing, and we need to make sure that has value and people feel that it's protected. Just to give you a bit of an idea, a little ecosystem of how that is all put together. You can see there, just in the top right, I suppose that's about 1 o'clock, if you will. So it starts with, like I said, those publishers, those authors, those artists. They are creating content. I think the creative industry in the UK is worth about 124, 125 billion. This is a big industry. Whether you like to go and listen to bands or read a book, this is all part, of course, of that world that we want to keep buoyant and for people to be able to continue to make that work. So they create and publish content which is included within that CLA blanket license that you get as a school. Institutions, they then purchase that license. They then get the permissions to copy, protect the risk of, protect from the risk of copyright infringement. Those might be, like I said, the Department for Education. We deal with the Welsh Government, Scottish Government, Northern Ireland. Also, organisations that work with independent schools. If ever you feel your school might not be covered in any shape or form, then you can contact us and ask. But like I said, if you are, for example, a state school in England, you'll be covered under the Department for Education licence. So that should be absolutely no problem at all. What we do, we mass a large amount of data through data collection exercises. These are conducted by us. It's sample copying. Some of you may have been involved in these, where we find out what's being copied and to what volume. And that data is then used to calculate royalty payments for the people that the work has been used for. So there's very much a science to it. It's not a case of, oh, I guess that people are using this book a lot or this work or whatever. We do find that information out as best as possible and then make sure the right people are being remunerated. And then what happens is the CLA, we return that data and the license fees, and we organise, we send that to organisations who then distribute that money as royalty payments. So that's organisations such as Publishers Licensing Services, DAX, Design and Artist Copyright Services, Pixel, Picture Industry Collecting Society. So we then make sure that they get the money to distribute to the actual the authors themselves. So it's quite a wonderful ecosystem. It really does have a lot of data and science behind it. So just a little kind of idea of, like I said, what we are and what we're not, just in the headline format. We are a not-for-profit organisation. Like I said, aside from our operating costs, all the money goes back as royalties to the actual creators of content. We are a provider of blanket licenses. So, like I say, we are a solution to a problem. What we're not is the copyright police. Like I said, we are, as I mentioned before, very much carrot not stick. And we're not a legal advice board or specifically a copyright advice board. We can give advice on our license that helps prevent you infringing copyright, just to make that definition clear. I think some people contact us, whether it be schools or we work with NHS and other organisations and individuals in business. And sometimes I think they try to tease out an answer from us that they then feel will be something that will stand up in court for them as some kind of evidence base or otherwise. I'm afraid that's simply not the case. You know, like I said, we can give advice or we can signpost and help you to find the right information for sure. So just moving on then to some common misconceptions. And again, some of these come from the survey that was very kindly done by Rick and the team, but also just some things that you may have encountered yourself within the school environment. So I just wanted to bring them up one at a time and just get people's views. Just some statements that have come up, like I say, during my time at the CLA. One that comes up quite a bit is, if it's free to view, does that mean it's free to use? I've got a bit of a true and a false there, and I was going to give you an answer in a second, but I know Ben's just going to be putting that into the chat. Hopefully we can just give a little a T or an F on that just to see what people's thoughts are. So when we're talking about free to view, so things on the internet, does that mean that we can use that within an education setting quite happily? Let's just see if that's come up there. Okay, there's quite a few bits coming into the chat, which is good to see. So we'll attack those at the end if that's okay. So the answer, hopefully, you've thought about is false. Images, as with most copyright material, images tend to be quite a common one that, like I said, from the title of this particular session itself. Just because something's free to view, it doesn't mean it's free to use. It is very important to check the copyright conditions, where that's come from. There is a lot of tools out there now that some organisations use, like web crawlers that search for imagery that might be used without permissions. So you have to be quite careful about that. You know, and leading on from that, common question that's asked. Can schools, well, schools can't use copyrighted materials for their websites without permission. So being a school website, non-commercial, does that mean that, you know, copyrighted materials can be used open source on the actual website itself? Is that the case? Yes or no? Well, the answer is true. They can't just use copyrighted materials. If you are using anything and you want it to be covered under the license, it would be within the confines of an authentication method such as a VLE or some kind of intranet that you've got. The minute that you start to put things on an open-facing website or otherwise open source, then you need to make sure that you seek permissions for that. That is not something that would be covered with your CLA license. It's quite a commonality that I've found where I get calls from administrators in schools, and they say that they've had a letter on the desk about something that perhaps a teacher's put up as a, you know, part of a blog or you know, part of a school trip that they're doing, and they found an image of that particular place and put it on the website. That can get you into hot soup. So just be aware of that for sure. Work needs to be registered if you want it copyrighted. This is something that people are not always sure about. It's good for pupils as well to be aware of this. If they're creating original works, what do they need to do in order for that work to be copyright? Well, under UK law, there's no office with a guy who's stamping your work and you have it registered. The fact is that if you've created something, then it is copyrighted. If it's something tangible, then it is your property and you take ownership of it. You can't really copyright an idea or concept. So say, for example, if I was writing a short story about a British secret agent, that would be fine, because that concept, it can't be copyrighted specifically. But if I was to call him James Bond and then started to talk about his adversary, Dr. No, and then that would start to become a copyrighted piece of IP, and in which case that would be an issue. So does work need to be registered? The answer is false. On the same count, there is a limit as to how much can be copied and shared under the CLA license. So what I mean by that is, if you have a book or an article, do you have to stick within a certain limit as to what you can copy, or can I just copy as much as I see fit? Well, under the CLA license, it is true that there is limits as to what can be copied, and the golden triangle, if you like, is just up on the screen there, or say it's a triangle as a circle, but I think you take the point, I hope. So you can basically copy whichever of the three options is greater. So if two chapters come to 5% of the book, you can copy both under the license. And these amounts do apply to digital material as well. We know that things like websites, they're not organized in the same sort of way as a print book. We totally get that. But we advise you to use your best judgment to copy reasonable extracts in line with the above guidance. So, you know, just again, using it for the purpose of teaching and learning, that gives you a bit of a barometer as to what should be, you know, a good amount to fairly, or you know, to you know, copy without having any kind of issues from a publisher's perspective. And just on that point, one thing that came up in the survey, and something again that comes up quite a lot with myself and schools, is this idea of fair use or fair dealing. These are both terms that are used. Some people seem to use them interchangeably. Just to be clear, fair dealing is a legal term used to establish whether a use of copyright material is lawful or whether it infringes copyright. Fair use is a much broader brush, and it is in US law. So fair use has nothing to do with us here in the UK, just to be clear. It broadly works outside of specific categories, and it's around activity that's considered to be fair or within factors set out in legislation. But it is not something that we have over in this country. Really helpfully, there is no statutory definition for what we do have, which is fair dealing. It'll always be a matter of fact, degree or impression. The question you need to ask yourself with fair dealing is basically, how would a fair-minded person, a fair and honest-minded person, have dealt with this work? So if you are seeing something being copied and you feel is this right? Is this too much? What would a fair person do? Would this be taking money out of the pockets of somebody along the line, such as a publisher? Because the amount of content that's being copied would mean that work would not perhaps be purchased elsewhere or be used in a different way. So it's a very grey area, but you just that rule of thumb. What would a fair person do? A fair person would not copy an entire book 5 times over and distribute it and send it home for pupils to read, etc. So that's just a definition between those two terms. And like I said, certainly we should be working towards the fair dealing. The reality is, of course, that because you've got or you should have hopefully a CLA license, you don't need to worry too much about this. As the publishers we cover, etc., the works that we cover, this would be a very kind of small percentage of what would be happening in schools, if any at all. So just be aware of that. That's one of the reasons you'd have the CLA license. And just to break it down a little bit, because like I said, it did come up in the survey. So just to unpick it to that next level, but I don't see any need to go any further than this. Fair dealing, like I said, is a legal term. And if you want to learn more about it, you've got the Intellectual Property Office. They lay it out a bit clearer than I can for you this evening. But there is a number of different elements to what would be classed as fair dealing. For example, you might see a video which is parodying or pastiching a film or a piece of work, and they're using quite a lot of that film and piece of work to parody it. I'm quite a fan of YouTube. I quite enjoy some of the humour that's on there, and you see a lot of people who are parodying something. It might be a song or a video or otherwise. That's under the terms of fair dealing within reason. The same as if you are critiquing or reviewing something, you need to be able to talk about it and probably show extracts for that to happen. But the one that we need to concentrate about in education is the fact that we are using our fair dealing term is used for educational uses of illustration for instruction. So if we were, say, for example, putting a part of a poem up on the board to illustrate how the language is utilized and how the poet has used iteration or adjectives or otherwise, that would be classed as fair dealing. But like I said, you're probably covered under the CLA license with that particular poem or otherwise anyway. But just to give a bit of a breakdown of that for you. Okay, so just give a bit of an idea of what is covered by the license as well as what isn't covered by the license. So the CLA license, like I said, it allows you to copy publications from the UK plus actually 38 other international territories. There is a permissions checker on our website. I'm going to show you that afterwards. So if there's something that you might feel is a bit obscure or not sure if it's covered in any shape or form, you're wanting to use it quite substantially in school, there's a checker on the website that you can use. I'll show you that shortly. But basically, books, journals, magazines, digital resources, they are protected by copyright. So that that means that it's likely you need to seek permission before you reuse published materials. So that's why you've got the CLA's blanket educational license. It gives teachers at licensed institutions the right to copy and reuse published materials. And just to give an idea of the basics with that, so school and college, you need to own a copy of that that's being reused. So that might be a book, a magazine, a journal, certain website content. You need to have a copy of that in your artillery, if you like, in order to then be making reproductions of that. You need to have staff and students at your school or college, if they need to receive copies under the license. So, like I said, they're the main stakeholders really that would be having copies given to them for, like I said, the purposes of teaching and learning. So that would be covered under your license as well. You are able to make as many copies as you need. That's absolutely fine. So if I've got 30 pupils and I want to make 30 copies of something, that makes total sense. I did that quite regularly as a teacher myself. And, you know, everyone's got access to the copies that they need. By the same count, if there's copies that you have made for a certain purpose, a learning experience, something, a topic or a project which you've now finished with, and you will not be teaching again in the near future, then it's incumbent to make sure that copied material is destroyed and deleted as much as possible. So always good to have a practice of having a bit of a spring clean on those VLEs or otherwise those SharePoints or anything that you're using to keep copied material on, and also reminds colleagues in the classroom and beyond, you know, that if you're not using something anymore, to kind of keep it indefinitely is probably not a good idea. And as mentioned before, you can, if you wish, copy an article, a chapter, or 5% of the total. It's quite a nice little diagram to show and share if you need to. You know, that's available if you want it to be, just to help people keep on track with actually what they are sharing themselves. Okay, just going to take a little sip of water, and we'll have a little look at what's not covered by the license. There's a few things just to be aware of. And some of these can be licensed elsewhere, but what you need to be aware of is, again, if we're thinking about that fair dealing, workbooks, work cards, or assignment sheets. This comes up quite a lot. If something has been produced as a one-time event, so say, for example, like I said, you've got an assessment piece that the pupil's going to be filling out, and that's the purpose of that work card or assignment sheet. If you're reproducing something that has a one-hit deal, if you like, then that would be an exclusion, because you would be affecting the earning outcome of that publisher. The idea is that would be purchased a number of different times. There is times where copying is not permitted under the CLA license. Majority, like I say, is, but just be aware that any publications that have a notice that they expressly state that, you know, it's not covered under your CLA license, then you just need to be aware of that. And again, that's where the permission checker on the website comes in. I will show you that, I promise. It's very simple to use, but something that would be quite handy to have at your disposal as well. Newspapers, so it might be for language studies or for literacy, a number of different ways in which newspapers and media, current events are used. You do have the NLA license, the media access. They've appointed us, the CLA, as an agent for UK education. So you can find out more about that, newspapers, etc., on the CLA website, but there is a separate license for that. The DFE, for example, has the NLA license along with the CLA license. So like I said, we act as agents for the NLA, so you should very well be covered for that anyway, but just just if you have any questions or queries, we can look at that for you as well. And then just to finish off, maps and charts. So I won't read it out. You've got it on screen now. I'm sure you can kind of see the things that I'm talking about, OS maps, etc. And then printed music, one that comes up time and time again. You know, consists entirely printed music. There is a printed music license, the SPML, is available for purchase. But you know, just be aware there is a number of different licensing options around printed music, but it is not something that we cover. Like I said, we cover publications, journals, articles, the things that will be used in day-to-day teaching and learning across the curriculum. Right. So I'm just aware of the time. I've just been having a little look at the chat. There seems to be a few different questions and queries coming up there. So I definitely want to leave time towards the end to make sure that people do get some of these questions answered. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plow ahead with some of the questions that you had with the survey that was shared by Rick, and just give you some of my thoughts and feelings on it. And then, like I said, when we come to the end and I've shown you some of the help and support available, we will have a look at some of the questions that you put in the chat as well, because it seems like there's a bit of a healthy discussion going on there too. And if we don't get a chance to touch on everything, then, like I said, I am here to help. I'll get the answers to you, hook or crook. I will do my very best for you. But these are just pulled from the survey that was done. As I mentioned, we are providing a service. We are not, you know, the copyright legal advice bureau or anything like that. So some of these questions, I'm afraid, I can give a bit of an opinion on, but this is not legal advice. I'm just being absolutely clear about this. I think that we've got to tread very carefully with some of the elements that people have asked here. But one thing I would be saying is, if in doubt, then you should be, you know, talking to your legal counsel within school or whoever that might be, or some of the go-tos that I'll mention towards the end. But like I said, happy to signpost. But one of the ones that was mentioned was about the accountability around who can be prosecuted, excuse me, over copyright infringement. Again, this is not something we can give advice on. The reality is anybody. It is a civil offence. It doesn't take much Googling to have a look at some of the cases that are being dragged through the courts around generative AI and other areas. And I'm sure, I mean, I used to show multiple copyright stories, which really gave an interesting insight into, you know, infringements for pupils to understand. I don't know if you remember or not, there was the picture of the monkey. I don't know if it was probably about 15, 20 years ago now, but for those of you old enough to remember, but this primate had taken a selfie of itself. The camera was owned by a photographer, and this selfie, it was essentially who owns the picture. Is it the primate or is it the photographer? There's some fascinating cases that go through the courts, but ultimately, you know, if you are infringing copyright, then it is a civil offence, just to be aware of that. Which platforms, such as Netflix, are a blanket no for schools? I was doing some supply teaching about 12 months ago, and it seemed very common, and it doesn't seem to have been a habit that's changed, of teachers sharing their personal accounts across a school, or to watch movies or other media with, you know, from that subscription service to a wider audience. To be clear, we don't cover streaming services. It would definitely be best to check the T's and C's with that said service. I think this speaks to a really important point, which is the terms and conditions of whatever it might be, the website or an image or a subscription service, they're not exactly riveting reading, but that's your go-to to find out if you feel something is what you might be using it for is an infringement on that property. So the T's and C's, although like I said, pretty dull, they do scope out, and generally if something has been purchased for a personal reason and it's being mass distributed, then that can cause problems. But again, this is an opinion. We don't cover streaming services, so it would be best to check those T's and C's for sure. What are the rules for uploading content onto school platforms? So we touched on this a little bit. So with your CLA license, you can essentially make as many copies as are needed to see that each student and any staff supporting the class, they've got access to a copy. So it's fine, for example, to put the copy on a VLE or an intranet, just making sure that it's secure to your school or college. That's the key, that it's not open source, and you know which eyes are on that material. That would then be covered by your CLA license. The issue comes when it's shared more broadly and it's open source, and it's not necessarily being used for the purposes of education or teaching and learning. So just to try and put some kind of definition on that for you. Are there specific rules for using copyrighted music, plays, or films during school plays, assemblies, or productions? The answer is yes, but we are not experts on this, however. So I did mention that a little bit before about exclusions. Again, we can help signpost to some of this if you wish, but it's not something that we cover. So you just need to be aware about seeking permission for that or have the relevant license as needed. Okay, last one. There was more, but like I said, I didn't want to just kind of go through a sort of a blow by blow. But this, I've just picked out some of the ones that I thought were quite pertinent. Does there need to be a legal notice above the photocopy or anywhere else in school? So we do provide notices. You can download them from the website. They give some really good help and guidance and advice. I suggest it'd be a really good thing to have up, but they're not a legal requirement. It's exclusive right of the rights holder to control reproduction of works. So we provide that guidance and help, but going back to that point before, we are a carrot, not a stick. And so if you want to put those up, then great. It helps inform staff, helps them to do the right thing, but it's not a legal requirement. Okay, so just coming to the end of our presentation around some of the help and support available. And I've mentioned it a few times, and it's our permission checker. This is on the CLA website. So like I said, if you've got anything that you feel you just need to double check, this is something anyone can use. It's you can see there in the top bar, resources, you've got the check permissions option, and it just gives you two simple options to choose from. Put the ISBN in, the title of the book, mention that you're checking for a school. It'll bring that book up. I mean, it's an extensive database, and straight away there we can see green for go, photocopying, scanning, read aloud. I can see quite clearly that particular book with that SBN, that title is absolutely fine to use, and it gives me a breakdown as well as to what I can do and not do with that. There is the read aloud option as well. That's a license that we have. It came out of the COVID times. Like many people, I'd rather kind of put that behind me now, as hard as it is. But very much there was books being read. Well, teachers were recording themselves reading books out loud, and then distributing that via a VLE or intranet to pupils. The power of hearing a book read out loud is just really, the engagement alongside the actual help and support with oracy and the reading ability of the pupil is just second to none. So there is a license specific for that activity, and you can see that gets listed there as well. But the permissions checker is on the website if you need it to have a look. It might be worth, if you've got librarians, etc., in your school, they probably know about this already, but if they don't, it'd be worth mention, definitely. We do have an interactive guide as well called Copyright Essentials. It's just to help. Oh, sorry, was that a question or? Yeah, sorry. Okay, I just thought someone was interjecting. It's to help get bearings on the copyright landscape. So it's a course which is 30 minutes in length, takes about that long, and it just helps you get the basics around copyright within schools. So it's actually really useful to share with your colleagues in school. It just helps them to think twice about some of the activities that they're doing and what the right thing to do would be. Very user friendly, and there's also a CPD certificate. It is accredited, by the way, so it would go within a sort of their CPD folder if they wish it to. But that is available on the website also. And we also have teaching and learning resources. So these were launched a couple of months ago. They're free to download. They are lessons as well as resource material. You can see it covers a whole range of subject disciplines from Key Stage 1 up to Key Stage 4. So they're completely curriculum aligned until, of course, the curriculum changes, in which case we'll deal with that when that happens. But even then, I think they'll certainly be very, very useful and relevant. And what they're essentially designed to do is to just, I suppose, help pupils become better global citizens around intellectual property, and also to support them becoming future content creators and make sure that they know how to protect their work and be able to support other people in their endeavours. And yeah, well worth sharing those out. Like I said, they just download, I believe, as PDFs, and they will fit nicely within the curriculum that you've got. Is the curriculum overpacked with stuff at the moment? Absolutely, and I'm sure that's the messaging that you'd get from your teachers. But if you look at the activities, I find them extremely engaging as a teacher. When I saw some of the learning objectives, I could see how they could fit very nicely with my plan materials. And obviously, as we're coming up to the spring term, there might be some elements there that we want to plan for September or even just after Easter, whenever it might be. And then just to kind of round off, if you like, a couple of places that you can go to find some additional information. Really helpful website, the copyrightuser.org. Just has a plethora of material, very easy to absorb and understand. Gives you a sort of a level of detail that you need in order to fulfill your duties. But I'd encourage you to have a look at this again if you wanted to share it out. It's some basic interactive videos and just talks about certain concepts and keeps them buoyant and hopefully not boring, but just sort of answer some of the questions that you have. And as I mentioned before, you've got the Intellectual Property Office. Not quite as snazzy a website, but it does what it says on the tin, if you will. This is where I mentioned about if you wanted to look at fair dealing in a little bit more detail around what the wording is as far as the law is concerned. This just has some information there that is just good to be aware of. You can see information around copyright there, trademarks. It goes way beyond what I've been discussing today, but yeah, just all there if you need it. And really, just to kind of conclude, it's always interesting to hear what you have to say as well. We run focus groups. We have materials that we distribute. As I said, part of my role is engaging with schools. I want to really best understand what's going on the ground, and what schools are having to deal with around contemporary copyright issues. We mentioned about generative AI being one particular element, which I'm sure you're all looking at with great interest. This came out only, I don't know what we're on. Is that today? I think it might be actually 10th of December. But the DFE, I think, is still trying to get their head around the juggernaut that is usage of generative AI and AI in schools generally. What does that look like? How is it being used? Some of the ways it's being used are certainly more subtle than others. As we all know, there's little help chat bots and goodness knows what. Some people don't even realize they're using AI in schools, of course. Other things are a bit more overt and obvious. And they've got Ofsted doing a research. They're reviewing apparently what AI looks like in schools at the moment. So that might be asked of some of your schools, that maybe during an inspection that would come up. But for us personally at the CLA, we've got a busy year coming up. We're doing a lot of work around generative AI, licensing, and also text data mining and how that fits within schools. If these are areas of interest to you, do feel free to reach out, and I can include you within any focus groups that we're conducting, or make sure that you're getting relevant research that we're creating, because without your voices, I was talking before about trying to find the key people on the ground, the ones at the chalk face, and network managers in education, I just think are absolutely fit that remit to a T. To hear what you guys are dealing with is really important, key to what I'm trying to do, which is make sure the CLA are providing the best licenses possible for you guys. Then do feel free to sort of drop me a line, say hello, connect on LinkedIn or whatever it might be. And that's it. I just wanted to sort of finish with my details there. So I've got my email. If you want to sort of speak at any point, then that's absolutely fine. But other than that, I think we've got nine minutes left-ish. So it'd be good to give a bit of space if anyone has any comments or questions. Be happy to answer those in the time we've got allowed left. So thank you for listening, being patient, everyone, and hearing my voice so much. Happy to hear yours now and see what you might want to ask.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. I think it's really clear. You said right at the beginning that you've been on both sides of the fence. It's really refreshing to hear somebody speak about something like this. You talked about the carrot and the stick. It's not punitive. It's in the spirit of trying to help people be compliant, and I think that's brilliant to hear. And I think it's been a really interesting discussion from my perspective. So thank you very much for what you've delivered.
You're welcome.
We do have a few questions. Thankfully, I didn't need to make them up because I say thankfully, it would have been a shame asking about badger copyright and things like that, but there we go. So I'll run through them in no particular order. First one from Jason. So you talked about if you have the CLA license, you're licensed to copy 5% or one chapter, for example, of a book. So yes. Jason's question is, if a chapter is 10% of a book, can he still photocopy that one? Is it whichever is the greater or the lesser, or is it one chapter, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's basically whichever's the greater. I mean, it's ultimately we're not expecting you to sit down and do some mathematical equations around what's being used. That's not the idea. It's very much a guide, and I suppose that goes back to that point I was making around, is what you're doing going to affect someone's livelihood or the money they might get from that work? If you were copying 6%, I don't think alarm bells are going to ring, but it's whatever's greater. But I do feel that is a really useful barometer for teachers and senior leaders and people that are copying in schools, because I suspect, and I could be wrong, but from my experience, there's a photocopier in the corner, and that's really the carte blanche to become a human printing press. And not a lot of times people know what the kind of the guardrails are around that. So it might be useful to look at some of those posters that I was talking about on the website. But yeah, that gives you a good guide. But we certainly don't want people kind of awake at night thinking, oh, I've got a little bit over, a little bit under. It's obviously common sense prevails.
Brilliant. And then the second question from Jason was, do we have to opt into the CLA license, or are schools automatically covered by it? And if we do have to opt in, or well, either way, is there a cost for it? And what is the cost?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, essentially, we work with the Department for Education, and they provide a CLA and NLA license for all state schools in England, and I believe some independents. But ultimately, if you're a state school, you're covered. If you're not, and you're an independent school, in which case you need to have a look at what you've got set up through one of the organisations such as IAPS or the Independent Association for Prep Schools, or whether it be in Scotland, the Scottish Commission for Independent Schools. So if you're not sure, please do feel free to ask, email me and check. But yeah, if he's talking from a state school perspective, then he shouldn't have any worries at all.
And when we're talking state schools, something that Bradley mentioned was, is there a difference between local authority schools and multi-academy trusts, or schools that belong to multi-academy trusts?
I mean, essentially, they're both funded from the DFE, aren't they? Yeah. It's just whether it's from LA level or DFE. But yeah, again, it's good to distinguish that. There is a breakdown on the website. If you go under the school license, it literally talks about the authorities who we work with that blanket license is provided through. But very importantly, that cost is not passed down to schools. Just to try and make that clear.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Another question from Bradley. Can a school be prosecuted for breaching copyright?
Again, it goes back to my point about, it's a civil offence. And so technically, yes, who gets prosecuted, it depends on who's actually pursuing. I think it's something that if you feel there's an issue within school that you need to highlight, then I would be talking to your legal counsel, or certainly discussing it with your SLT. But again, we can't give advice, but yes, it's a civil offence, so just to be aware of that. Anyone can be prosecuted.
So interestingly, if we were to be doing that, I'd take your point, speak to your SLT, make them aware of it. When you're doing that, it helps to have examples to use. So do you have any examples, or do you have any kind of case studies where organizations have been successfully sued, or kind of approached for that? It's always good to scare somebody into action, isn't it?
It's good to highlight the pitfalls. I agree. It's not the route we've normally taken, but I understand the point. The short answer is no, we don't. It is interesting and compelling, because I think these certain tales of woe just help people just to kind of realise what could be the extent or the case of there being a problem. If you have a look online, I'm sure there's plenty of sort of situations that you could use as a cautionary tale. But again, we provide a service which is the license that essentially prevents that from happening as best as possible. As long as you're operating within the confines of that license, then you should be sleeping well at night and not worrying about any of that at all. That's what I want to do, is make sure people get a good night's sleep. But yeah, I know that was a bit of a kind of a swervy answer, but yeah, it's not
That's fair enough. There's a career in politics for you if this doesn't work out, James. Um, Final question. We've got 2 minutes left, and I think we could go on, but I think we'll wrap up with the final question, and that comes from the famous Mr. T English, so famous it doesn't even need to use his full first name. Can print resources be digitized for students with a with a visual impairment? So if you've got students who really struggle to access a finely printed document, could you digitize it under the license and so that they can put it onto a digital device and zoom in, for example, or change the contrast or the background? How does that work?
Yeah. So again, if it was talking about as far as the license is concerned, if that was done within the confines of an authenticated system, there is an exclusion to copyright. And again, I encourage anyone to look this up in more detail, because I'm not, again, portraying myself as a copyright law expert or otherwise. But one of the exceptions is actually around accessibility for people with disabilities. So the fact that you could take a published piece of content and make it accessible for that person is classed as an exception in a lot of instances. So, like I said, the first thing I would say is, like, if it's being used within the confines of the school intranet of VLE, should be fine. But it might be worth also looking at that as a backup. But if you got the license, you shouldn't be worrying about that too much. But a great question as well. I used to work a lot with Send, and it's such a multitude of complicated learning adaptations that you need to deal with. It's a fascinating area, and one that you need to really get your head around with differentiation otherwise.
Brilliant, James. Thank you so much. You've certainly opened my eyes, and I trust that you've done the same for the people who are watching. We've had a good, healthy audience that's maintained all the way through, and I think that's a good sign that you're keeping people's attention. So,
a low attrition
thanks
rate,
so
that's
much.
good.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So thank you very much. We did say at the beginning that obviously the session is being recorded, which you'll notice if you see the little recording button in there. But James is also going to make the slides available, so have a look on the portal a little bit later on, and by a little bit later on, I'm being as vague as possible to give Rick time to get it all published, and we'll make all that information available. James's details are on screen. We'll also put those on the portal as well, with your permission, James. And just, yeah, great to keep the conversation going around this. I think it's an important matter that often is swept under the carpet, and I think we feel better prepared to answer some of the questions from our teachers now. So once again, thank you very much, James, and thank you very much, everyone, for watching.
Thanks, guys. You're more than welcome. Have a great evening.